Alright, today I'd like to walk you through the amp sim that I'm using. This amp goes for, well, it's amp sim, but it sounds like an amp if you said it right. $99.95 on the internet. It's a download, and it's by Peavey. It's called the Revalver 4. Now, the Kempers and the Neural DSP. Alright, today I'm walking you through the Peavey Revalver 4. This is an amp sim, and if you are on a budget, I don't think you can do much better as far as the number of features you get for $99.95 here. It's available as a download. There's no iLock required, I believe, for this. I don't remember using an iLock on it. Anyhow, I have an iLock to go with the Pro Tools. So let's take a close look at what you get when you buy this amp sim. You get a whole bunch of presets, and they give you first impressions, which is a great place to start. So if you're just overwhelmed and you want to try something, you could click on one of these. I did this. Simple Michael. What the heck is that? You know, I like Michael Schenker, so let's see what we got. And it pulls up something CM, right? 50 watt, high gain rock and roll, 900. Looks to me like it's maybe in the JCM type of thing, right? So we don't want to get Peavey in trouble. Now, I had heard in an interview with Michael Schenker that they actually, at the Marshall factory, tried to copy one of Michael's amps, or get the sound that Michael was getting out of his amps with his wah-wah the way he does. So that makes sense that they would call their perhaps Marshall emulation a Michael, right? And if I go in here, they've got the Peavey impulse response. So here, let's just go deep dive right away, right? You've got an impulse response. What type of cab do you want? You want the Michael? Well, let's look at what that is. It says 1960A, and I look at it, and Marshall has a 1960A, so I think I'm not making up nonsense there to assume that that's the emulation, right? But they didn't get the trademark or the copyright or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Peavey didn't need to worry about that. So if it's a Peavey product and hardware, they just use the actual name. Let's take a look at perhaps, this 4x12 right here. That looks like a Peavey 4x12. I'm going to get out of here and go back into the Michael. We've got an SM58, typically a vocal mic, dynamic I think. And you've got a gain option for your microphone. You've got a proximity or closeness to the grill. And on axis or off axis. So I usually leave that button undepressed because I prefer straight on, right? However, if you had an amp sound on record that was out of phase with what you're trying to do, you could click this and correct a phasing issue, and it turns the microphone simulation at an angle to the speaker. Here we are. We've got different places where we could put the microphone. Typically, I think most people go towards the center. And over here, we've got some filters and a delay and ambience. Now, I have the room ambience on. I have it set at about 10 o'clock. A little bit above a medium-sized room. Actually, this is not mine. This is a default, right? They got a little bit of low pass going on there, or low cut and high cut. And there's no delay being used. So, that's kind of the basics when you're in the amps and cabs area. Let's click over here in the first part of the signal chain, and that would be your Stomp Boxes. So you just right click here, right, and it pulls up a menu. And if there's a D, it's a demo, and it's available for purchase in the amp store right here. However, I've never needed to do that. But let's find a pedal that I think we all like to use. There we go. I've got a light green that looks like an Ibanez tube screamer. So that's one version of the tube screamer. Let's get rid of that one. Nothing wrong with it, but check this out. Okay, so delete this module, click on it again, here comes the menu. And I like the tube screamer. In fact, this guy comes with a different one. The original King of Green pedals, warm distinctive drive, which can edge a rig into breakup or add extra saturation to distortion. So there you go. And it even says, if you zoom in here, TS808, which I believe is the chip that causes the distortion, a bucket, maybe it's bucket cascades, cascading buckets, I'm not sure. Whatever, that's the famous chip for the Ibanez tube screamer. You can turn the pedal on or off. You can adjust the settings on your pedals. So let's just play around here. What do we got? We've got a distortion pedal. What else would I use if I'm going for a guitar sound that I like? I'd always want to distort a chorus pedal there. So I've got a Boss chorus as a simulation. Sounds great. I use that a lot. Well, when you're using pedals, you generate noise. So hopefully we've got a noise gate. And Peavey does have one. They call it the Caftan with umlauts above the A. Now I would use this in direct. I don't know how to sidechain this. And you just start out with the threshold wherever it is, and if it's not taking away enough noise, just barely edge it up to where it's taking up the noise of when you're not touching your guitar. As soon as you touch your guitar, I like that green light to go on so that it's not set for such a clamp down, you know, it's more natural sounding. And what else might I use here? I think there's one other pedal that I use, and that is this analog delay, which looks like a Moog. Right? And it's got some sort of low frequency oscillator, I believe. There's depth and rate. We've got mix, feedback, drive, delay, tap tempo. As fast as you tap this, you can get the tempo, or you can use the button here for the number of milliseconds in the delay. I'm going to turn that puppy off. Don't want to generate extra noise. Same here. Okay, so you can add stomp boxes, and once again you just left click and there's a wide menu. If you need to have the Rat Proco emulator, the Black Death, right? Rats, the Plague, Black Death, it all makes sense. You got to kind of decode these names. They're hinting, but they didn't want to do the licensing probably, and that's why you get this for so cheap. You can buy that one in their amp store if you just got to have that Rat distortion, and their emulations are top notch. They sound very good. Let's move on. Now, to be honest, my first two amps were Peavey's, and I was extremely unsatisfied. I got them when Peavey was a pretty new company. I was in 6th grade, and I got a Mace and a Deuce, and it wasn't in that order. I think I got the Deuce first, and then later I got a Mace, and I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting the sound of the people that I was listening to. And then it occurred to me after hearing and reading that Marshall had this presence feature. So later on, Peavey began to make amplifiers with the crispness of a presence control, and everything changed. But the early Peaveys had a really dark tone, and if you were going for something bright and yet distorted, it was not going to be found in a Peavey. Molly Hatchet used to use Peavey, and they got a great sound out of it. But they weren't for me when I first started. Now that being said, everything Peavey's doing here with these amps sounds legit. So I'm going to go into another favorite of mine real quick here, the Flat Hill, which is the Mesa Boogie. Definition of a mesa is a flat hill, right, or capped off mountain. And I can look at this interface and say we've got diamond plate, something that's the definition of a mesa. Okay, looks like a mesa. Looks like a Mesa Boogie cabinet. Do you have to use that? No. You can use a Peavey 4x12, 6505, or you could use the Michael 1960A. Now, over in the microphones, let me set this back on Mesa. They've got an SM7. Now, I don't use this particular module. This is a preset. What I've done is I've taken and reset all the settings, to make it sound exactly the way I want it. And I'm going to go to that setting, and then you can do a save, and it's a user preset then. So it's not coming with the amp. So when you see this name, it says Lead Reverb Mesa Boogie. I did that, not Peavey. They are not claiming to be Mesas. Anyways, what I've got here looks like an AKG. As far as my mic, I've got many mics to choose from a Shure SM58, Shure SM57. There's all these different mics, and I'm not a studio engineer per se. I've never been trained, but there's a lot of great mic choices there. I know they're great because I've tried them. Over in here, you can choose where you'd like your mic to be placed in relation to the cone, geography of the cone. Center here. On the far right, you've got some low cut, some high cut you can add to. It's got a delay option. I don't use that right here because there's plenty of other delay on here. And the ambience is on. That's just room ambience. It's not really heavy. So enough said about that. that's how you turn this amp into something that sounds a little bit more like a amp in the middle of a room pushing air. Moving on, let's go to the effects. Sorry about the jiggle there, sorry about that. So if you go to effects, this is your rack. You know, they've got the simulated aluminum rack here, and I've got a stereo splitter that comes with Peavey. I've got a flanger that comes with the Peavey, a simulated rack mount stereo delay, which has some chorus with it and some room ambience. I have it turned off because I've already got room ambience on my other impulse device. I've got a noise gate here. I gate all over the place. Whenever I'm using effects, I'm generating noise, so I try to remove that noise ASAP. So, last feature that I've chosen here is a reverb, and I've got it set on Labyrinth, which is one of the defaults. I've got it set at about 945, right? So, if I wanted to pull up and add another rack mount effect, I'm going to hit left click, and I could add anything that's not got a D on it. And if it's got a D on it and you need to have it, it's a purchase, it's a demo, right? But this one here is not a demo. So if I wanted this worldwide verb, I'd just put in wherever I'd like. There you go. Now you look at this unit, it's quite amazing. It's got a tap delay, reverb, fat verb delay. I never use this one because I've already got enough verb and echo with my other units. And then there's an output filter here. So some people may prefer that to the one I'm using. The one I'm using feels a bit more analog. So I'm going to delete this module by right clicking, and let's see here. Delete this module. Okay, so some of the neater features besides the tweak the schematic, if I go up to the input, you get some features that come in the signal chain. Before you hit your stomp boxes, there is an adjustment here, sort of like a preamp strip is the way this reminds me of the way it behaves, but it doesn't have compression per se. So you've got an adjustment for the level of your pickups. And if you want to do an auto set, you depress this button. This goes green and you play some chords as loud as you can, and it'll automatically set this so you're never clipping, but it will set it so you get a nice hot signal. And if you actually know the RMS on your pickup, which I don't, you could input it here, or you can just guess and check until you get a sound you like. I'm going to be honest here, this has something to do with electronics. I think that's resistance, but I don't care. I just adjust it till it sounds good. Then we've got another noise gate. I use this all the time. Usually it's at about 7. Okay. The more you turn it up, the more noise is removed, but the more choppy the sound is. So there's a fine balance between too much gating and not enough gating, right? You've got to get it where it sounds natural, but you don't want all that extra hiss and weird harmonics or finger noise coming in. Here we got a tuner, which is a really nice feature to have. You can use this entire unit as a standalone or a plug-in, right? So of course Pro Tools has a tuner. But I use this tuner all the time. It's quite accurate, and you can set it at 432 if you think that's the proper A. You can go all the way down to 430, all the way up to 450. I've got it set at 440. This profiler right here, I've been able to program it in the past. I have not looked at the manual, and I don't use it that often, but what you can do is set it so that when you grab different guitars, doesn't matter, it always sounds like your favorite guitar. So like I did my Japanese Strat and my other Strat. I don't know how to keep this enabled because I haven't studied the manual, but if you use this thing, it does a great job. So I can take my Strat, right, and I can make it sound like one of their target profiles. I'm not going to do that right now, but you can make it sound like a Les Paul all the time, or you can make it sound like an ES335 all the time. There's just a whole lot you can do with this, but I never need it. You know, I like the sound of my guitars, so I don't want to change them into other guitars like a Line 6. They're pieces of hardware to me. Okay, so on the output here, you have the same type of feature where if you're not sure on your input gain, you click this white button here, and this light will go green for a short period of time, at which time you pluck the chords very hard, and it'll auto set your input gain so that it is not going to clip, but it'll set it high enough for a good signal to noise ratio. Same thing on the output. So these two features are quite important when you're setting up. If you don't set these, you're not going to get the best sound you can out of this device. So it also has your output gain, and I use the auto feature here. Turn that on, right? I'm not doing anything right now, but you would play chords as hard as you can. Any second now the light will go off. There you go, the light went off, and it's maxed out because I didn't play any chords. So let me back this thing way off. So that's an auto set feature. If you prefer to just set it based on your ears, that's great. You can do that too. There's the amp store, there's tools, there's about, I don't want to go into all that right now. Let's just do a quick recap. It comes with presets, many different amps. You can take an amp that they've got, for example, the Peavey Classic 30 right here. You can go in and reset everything the way you like it to sound. Set your impulse responses and your mic placement and your type of mic and your room ambience and your echo and your delay and all that. And then you can save it. And you can save it as a user preface with this button right here. So I'm not going to do that. I don't often need to.